Hi, I'm Joe Thompson. I work for Hunter Local Land Services. In this video, we're going to be talking about the value of floodplains for food and fodder production, and we'll examine some of the structures you're likely to find as part of the Hunter Valley Flood Mitigation Program. We're now just outside Morpeth, and behind me you can see the Hunter River just downstream of the township. It's important to know a little bit about how the Hunter Valley Flood Mitigation Scheme is funded and managed. The scheme is valued at about $700 million, including all the levees, the floodgates and the other associated structures and works, and is owned by the New South Wales Office of Environment and Heritage, in effect the New South Wales Government. Hunter Local Land Services pays for a part of the maintenance and construction costs through funds generated from the Hunter Catchment Contribution. That's a rate that all ratepayers in the Hunter Valley pay to Hunter Local Land Services. Okay, well here we are at the Oakhampton spillway, just at the back of Walker Waterworks. And we're going to talk about the history of flooding in Maitland and the purpose of the flood mitigation scheme. The Lower Hunter floodplain has a long history of flooding, with major floods recorded in the 1830s, the 1930s, the 1950s, 1970s, and more recently in 2007 and 2015. In the 1955 flood, some 200 hectares or 500 acres of alluvial floodplain was lost from around Maitland, and that's a significant loss to agricultural productivity. So sometime in the 1950s, the flood mitigation program or the flood mitigation scheme was born and it was commenced to be built. The purpose of the program is about mitigation. It's about reducing the impact of flooding. It's not about complete flood protection. So we should all understand that these floodplain management system, the levee banks in particular, don't protect us from major floods in magnitude of 1955 plus. The spillways and levee banks are designed to spread water across the floodplain and slow down raging torrents of floodwater, as was seen in the 1950s, to reduce the impact on urban areas and to reduce the impact on agricultural production. On the far side of this floodplain, on the far side of the spillway, you'll see the river gauging station. It's on top of the levee that's right on the river. That levee over there is constructed at the same height as the levee here that I'm standing on, with the spillway in between, which has been designed, as we said earlier, to allow water to spread across the floodplain in a managed and controlled way. Well, behind me you can see a fairly typical floodplain drain. There's a network of several hundred kilometres of these drains out on the floodplain. They're obviously man-made, and they're used to allow floodwater and nuisance stormwater to drain off the floodplain and out through to the river via the floodgates. So this is a floodgate located on the Hunter River between Morpeth and Hinton. The role of a floodgate is to allow water that gets onto the floodplain during a flood event to re-enter the river. So when we have a flood that stays within the levee banks, the floodgate closes and stops the water in the river from entering the floodplain. If, however, we have a flood that overtops the levees and flows out onto the floodplain, when the river level recedes to the point where it's below the floodgate, then the water can flow back off the floodplain. It's really important that we manage nuisance flooding on an ongoing basis so that we don't have a frequent level of flooding that just becomes a problem to us. But we also need to manage flooding in a way that allows the ongoing replenishment of the floodplain and allows it to continue to be productive. Because of their high fertility, floodplains are really important for food and fodder production. You can see behind me that hay production and production of maize for animal fodder on this floodplain is really highly productive and very successful. It's important to understand that the floodplain is so productive because it's been created by the deposition of silt over many thousands of years. The flood mitigation scheme seeks to manage and control that flooding. It's really important to remember that no two floods are the same. We don't get the same rainfall pattern in the catchment for any two floods. Winter floods in this part of the world are really often created or influenced by slow-moving east coast lows that sit over the region and dump really intense rainfall over several days and create the floods that we've most recently seen this year and in 2007. And those floods can be really quite different to the ones we experience as a result of cyclones in the north of Australia during the summer, and you see weather patterns coming from a different direction and carrying their rain in a different way. And the big flood in Maitland, the 1955 flood, the one that everybody remembers, and it's the standard against which all other floods are measured, was a result of a summer cyclone weather event, as opposed to the more recent ones that we all remember, which were east coast lows in winter. With climate change upon us, the frequency and intensity of these kinds of storm events is likely to increase, which might mean for us that we have increased numbers of floods and different kinds of floods at different times of the year. There's no one time of the year that's able to be predicted as a flooding season in comparison to any other, so floods can come at any time and in short notice. So I guess really the key message is understand where you live, the constraints you live with, be prepared for a flood at any time, listen to the messages you're being provided and get yourselves prepared.